Hi, I'm Steve. Welcome to Thrifty Adventurers. It's early January, not a very good time of year for camping here in the Northeast. And in fact, we got 10 inches of fresh snow overnight and it's still snowing out now. This is the time of year when I make plans for the coming year. So far this year, we're planning a spring trip to the desert Southwest. It's an area we've never visited. Linda's wanted to visit the numerous national parks in the region for many years, and recently I've gotten excited about visiting the southeast corner of Arizona to look for wildlife. I'm in the process of putting together a rough itinerary for a trip that will enable us to do both. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to show you some of the planning tools I use. My basic tools include a mapping program that's unfortunately no longer available, DeLorme Topo North America. I have version 10, which I think was the last version that was released. I haven't been able to find anything that's currently on the market that has all the features of Topo North America, but if you know of one, please let me know. The custom maps feature of Google Maps is a pretty good substitute, and I use it too. The other important tool I use extensively is a spreadsheet program. For years, I used Excel, and I still prefer it. But since Microsoft went to a subscription program, I've switched to the SoftMaker suite and its PlanMaker spreadsheet component. Spreadsheets are probably the most essential tool I use. Over the past 10 years, I've developed spreadsheet files that are collections of data about campgrounds and other camping areas, dispersed camping, particularly nice or convenient legal stopovers, and similar places, derived from a wide variety of sources and sorted by jurisdiction or type. Those spreadsheets give me a deep well of offline material, available whether I have cell service, Wi-Fi, or no service at all. They're also usually the source from which I develop the maps that are the graphic element of my planning process. The spreadsheet data can also be imported directly into Google Maps, creating a rich map product that can be invaluable while on the road. There have been many times when we found our intended stopover unattractive or unavailable, making it necessary to come up with a plan B on the spot. Having our saved custom Google Maps makes that task easy if we have service. The app will even give us driving directions. If we don't have service, as is often the case, having the maps I've built in Topo North America available on my laptop is a less convenient but equally workable solution. In this video, I'll demonstrate my process of arriving at a draft itinerary, both the considerations of the decision-making and the nuts and bolts of developing the maps and the spreadsheets related to the itinerary. So let's get going. So I have Topo North America open here. This is a new file. This is what you'd ordinarily see when you first open the program. But I'm going to navigate to one of my saved files. This is the map that I've developed as the starting point for my Southeast Arizona trip itinerary. And you can see the whole country is covered with map tags. And these map tags are one of the main reasons that I really like Topo North America. All of these map tags are part of different layers, and I can turn off those layers. They're called draw files in Topo North America. So I'm going to start turning them off, and you can see the map becomes much less cluttered. I'm going to leave a couple of them active that contain the information about the itinerary that I've begun to develop. All right, so now this is a more reasonable map, and most of my map tags are gone now. I still have this group here, which is those are National Forest Service in Tennessee and Virginia, and the reason that they're still active is because they'll make it possible for me to show you how I arrive at my itinerary. The red dots here, those are starting points and ending points for different days in the itinerary, and being able to look at the map in a zoomed out manner like this allows me to get a better sense of the distance between our starting points and our destinations for each day, so I can have some sense of how long the driving days are going to be. You can see that right here, for example, between this dot in Arkansas and this dot in Oklahoma, that's a fairly long day. Then when we get down into Texas, the distance between red dots becomes much closer together, and that's because we kind of arrived at the general region that the trip was planned for. So my usual strategy is to try to get to the region as quickly as possible in as few days as possible, and then once we get to our target region, we slow down and we allow plenty of room for spontaneity, so that we can, if we find a place that's particularly attractive, we can spend extra time. And similarly, if we find a place that we really don't like, we can move on. So I'm going to zoom in. You'll see this is our home right here. We're in Western Massachusetts, and this dotted line, I'll make it so that it's not dotted. These are my route files. All right, so now it's a solid yellow line. That would be the day's drive from home to Elizabeth Furnace, which is a Forest Service campground in Northern Virginia, pretty close to I-81 and very close to the north gate of Shenandoah National Park. The main attraction for Elizabeth Furnace over, say, Shenandoah National Park is that it's much closer to the highway, so it's easier to get to at the end of a long day's drive. They have showers, so if we get up in the morning and want a shower, we can take one, and then we're back on the highway fairly quickly. That's kind of my strategy for the first legs of the journey. This is, according to Topo North America, this is an 8.5-hour drive. It's never what they predict it to be, but the distance or the trip time that they estimate is a good guide for planning purposes. So as I choose destinations, I then develop a spreadsheet at the same time, and these are, I copy these line by line. First, these 5 columns, those are all columns that I added specifically for this itinerary. So the first is the day number in the trip. So I've got it to 49 days, and we may or may not do that many days. But then the next would be our date, which is dictated by our departure day, which is always a best guess. And then the next is the day of the week that those dates fall on, which is fairly important because you can see that I've got Friday and Saturday highlighted in yellow. When we're planning, we can see instantly where the Fridays and Saturdays of the trip fall, so that we can know that those are days when we're going to either have to be going to a place where we're relatively sure we're going to be able to get in, either have reservations in advance, which we seldom do, or a place that is usually not very busy, so we're pretty much guaranteed to get in there, or that's going to be a fairly short drive from the previous night's stay, so that we can get there early in the day. And in most cases, especially for a Friday, I try to have a second or third choice that's relatively close by, and so hopefully between the several choices that we've got, we'll be able to find some place that we'll be able to stay, and usually at least one of those places will be something like a rest area or something that we know no matter what we'll be able to stay there. It may not be the ideal situation, but we'll have a place to stay for the night. And oftentimes we try to stay at the same location on Friday night and Saturday night, so that once we're there, we can just hold on to the site through Saturday night, and then we move on on Sunday. So having the Fridays and Saturdays readily identifiable in our itinerary is pretty important. Then the next column is the distance, and once again, these are subject to change, but these are the distances according from from one destination to the other, as I've laid it out in the Topo North America program. And we frequently change these, but at least we've got some idea of the distance from one place to another. So even if we're not going to the specific destination that I have plotted on in Topo North America, if we're in that vicinity, the distance is going to still be relatively the same. And then the next one is the drive time, and the same thing applies to that. And then from there, we from column F over, these are all pulled directly from my other spreadsheets. So this is all standard data that I've collected and compiled in spreadsheets. I have a spreadsheet that's all Forest Service campgrounds. Actually, it's two different spreadsheets because there are so many of them. And I've done every state in the U.S., including Alaska, but not including Hawaii. Any place that we would be able to drive to. And then I've got another one for national parks. I've got one for Army Corps of Engineers, but each of them has the same format, so that I can take a row from any one of those spreadsheets and paste it into a spreadsheet that is a planning document for a particular trip, and all the data will line up, with a few exceptions. There are a couple that I have added a column, and so things don't quite line up, but it's easy to see where those are and make adjustments in the spreadsheet that I've pasted it into. So the data in these columns is first latitude, then longitude, then the jurisdiction or type. So here I've got National Forest Service, Corps of Engineers, city or town park, Texas Parks and Wildlife, National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management. So those would be under jurisdiction or type, and that's useful to us because, being of a certain age, we have the senior pass, and even if we didn't, we would probably have invested in the America the Beautiful pass. But having the senior pass means that in any national facility, National Forest Service, Corps of Engineers, Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, we get half price. We get half price on camping at virtually all of them. There are exceptions to that, but we always get a discount of some sort. So it's good to know the jurisdiction, because that helps us to know what it's going to cost us to stay in a particular place. The next is the name of the particular campground that I've got penciled in, then the state, and then the management. So that would be like in our first destination, Elizabeth Furnace. That's Washington Jefferson National Forest. That would be the management. Then the next one is Cherokee National Forest, and so on and so forth. And then the general location, just in broad terms, where on the map we're looking at. So the first one is Strasburg, Virginia. That's probably not so useful, but it's in my spreadsheet, so it's easier to just keep it in there than to get rid of it. Then next is the number of sites in the particular campground that we've got penciled in. That's helpful to know how likely we're going to be able to get a site there. The next is the fee, and usually if we are entitled to a discount, this is the fee that after the discount, and the fees are probably the biggest source of problems with my spreadsheets, because they change quite frequently, and there have been a lot of fee increases over the last few years, and it's a huge job to try to update those fees. So these are just a rough idea of what it's likely to cost us. If we need to know for a particular campground during this planning process, we look up to see what today's rates are, and usually I will update my spreadsheets once I find that out. The next is toilets. That would be flush toilets versus vault toilets. Next is water, especially out west. Water available is pretty spotty. Here in the east, it's almost unheard of to have a campground that doesn't have water, although there are plenty of dispersed areas and free campgrounds that don't have water. So Water is important to us. It's probably the biggest limiting factor in how long we can stay at a particular place. So at least every 3 days we need to be at a place that will have water available. Then next is electric. We don't look for electric. We don't really care about electric. If it's available and we have to pay extra for it, we usually don't get it. We prefer to get just a tent site because we have solar panels and a house electric system, and we prefer not to pay for those amenities because they're really not important to us. But there are quite a few campgrounds that we've been to that every site has electricity, and usually we're paying for it. We have no choice, and that's fine. As long as the site is affordable, electricity is a welcome amenity to have because it gives us a chance to recharge all of our batteries and avoid depleting them because we can run our few AC appliances off of shore power, and we do have a shore power port, and we always carry an extension cord so we have the means to connect to shore power with no problem. The next one is the dump station. Dump stations we don't really need, but they're nice to have. If there's a dump station, usually there's water, and we do have a porta potty. We have a Thetford portable toilet, which has a black water tank, which is relatively small and portable, so we can easily carry it into any toilet facility and empty it. But if there's a dump station, we use that, and it gives us a chance to rinse it out and refill our fresh water. So it's nice to know that if there is a dump station there or not. The next is showers. Showers are not a deal breaker if they're not there, but it's always nice to have them available. Especially every few days we need to have showers, so it's good to know whether there are showers available or not. And it's also nice to know whether they're pay showers or free showers. Out west, showers we've spent a lot of time and money looking for and paying for showers, but when you need one, you need one. Next is the season, and this is important, especially for an early season trip like we're planning right now. We're planning on leaving around April 19th, which here in the Northeast is pretty early. From here, probably halfway down the Mid-Atlantic, most campgrounds don't open until Memorial Day weekend. So April 19th, there are many campgrounds that haven't opened yet. So we need to know what the season is for any campground that we're going to. So that's listed there. Next is the limit, which is the length limit, which again is not all that important to us because our camper is 20 feet long, roughly the same footprint as a full-size pickup truck. So pretty much anywhere a vehicle can park to set up a tent, we can park and we can camp. Whether we can be level or not is another question, but we can always fit into these places. So the limit is there mostly because it's available fairly easily on most websites that give information about campgrounds, and you never know when you might need it, so I include it. And for the ones that are fairly close, there's one that is here that the limit is 25 feet. There's another one here that's 22 feet. It's good to know that because that means that many of the sites are probably going to be a tight fit even for us. We'll be able to get into them, but usually if they're that small, it's going to be more difficult to find a level spot. We have leveling blocks, so that's not the end of the world either, but it's good to know that. Anyway, the last column here is notes, which is just general notes. Reservations accepted. Reservations are becoming more and more common, both to be accepted and to be required. And reservations for people like us that like to be spontaneous are often bad news because, for instance, we took a trip to the Arrowhead region of Minnesota a few years ago, and we intended to stay at state parks there. There are lots of state parks there, and they sound very attractive. but we inquired about campsites at the place that we went to buy the passport to allow us to stay at state parks, which cost us $35, I think, and found out that all the sites were taken, and asked about the next one down the road. All the sites were taken. The next one down the road, all the sites were taken. And the guy that I was talking to told me quite proudly that all of their sites were 100% reservable now. And so that meant that for the most part, they were 100% reserved. So I don't think we stayed at a single state park. We did stay at one state forest, two state forests, excuse me, but the passport turned out to be an expensive, unnecessary expense. So we ended up staying mostly at National Forest Service facilities. So reservations they're good if you like to know that your site is going to be waiting for you. They're not so good if you don't know exactly when you're going to be arriving at a particular place, or if you want to have the ability to choose a site that looks good when you arrive there, because it can be very difficult. There are a lot of tools available to help you make an intelligent selection of a campsite nowadays, but it's far from perfect. Yeah, it's really difficult to have a sense of scale, for example, and some idea, a relatively good idea of how level or out of level a site is. So being able to drive through a campground and see who your neighbors are, and see where the water is, and see where the bathrooms are, and see what each site looks like is preferable to reserving a specific site in advance, unless you have been to the campground before, which usually we haven't. But more importantly, we don't like to be tied to a particular arrival date, because things happen. We had reservations in Texas on a trip we took in 2017, and it was the one and only time that our van broke down on the road. We broke down just outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we ended up spending the night in a scenic overlook, and had to have the van towed to a garage the next morning, and they were great. It's Off-Road and Diesel Specialists, I believe, is the name of the place, and they're in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, and I highly recommend them if you have a diesel. They got us in and out very quickly, but in spite of that, it was early afternoon by the time we got out of there, and I had planned on being in Texas that night, I think, and we drove into the middle of the night and just got into Louisiana, so we ended up losing our reservations, and we got to Texas the next night. But that's the sort of thing that can happen. Plus, we like to just be kind of loose in our planning, so that if we find a place that's particularly nice, we can spend extra time. So we generally don't like reservations. Anyway, that's enough. That's the spreadsheet that I develop, and I usually start with the mapping product so that I can look at a particular area. I have some sense of how far we're likely to want to drive in a day, and I just kind of zoom in on that area and see what's available for camping options. And I have one map product that has all of our spreadsheet data on it. So I have a wealth of information for any particular place, city and town, county, state. I don't have a lot of state parks, and I don't have a lot of state forests, unless there are some places where state forests are particularly attractive. So I have them mapped out, but for the most part, I don't have many state forests. But I have every national facility, national wildlife refuges that offer camping, which there aren't a lot of them, but there are some. Corps of Engineers, Bureau of Reclamation, Bureau of Land Management, and I can zoom in on an area and see what the options are, and just pick one that looks kind of attractive, and lay out a route to see what Topo projects for a distance and a travel time, to see if it's reasonable or not. And if it's too long a day, then I move back along our anticipated route to another place that looks promising and go through the same process until I have a series of stopovers that are spaced at appropriate intervals so that no day's drive is going to be too terribly long. We prefer to keep our travel days to 6 hours, 350 miles, thereabouts. We've done much longer days. We've done 600-mile days, but I don't enjoy those long days. So I much prefer to have a little bit of time to relax before we leave in the morning, be able to drive at a leisurely pace and make stops along the way and arrive early enough so that we can set up in the daylight and have time to cook dinner and relax a little bit before we turn in for the night. If we have a particularly long day, I try to have some kind of a fallback plan which will allow us to drive late into the night, arrive, have some quick meal cooked in our microwave powered by our house electric system, and or pick up something to go on the road, eat, go to bed, get up in the morning. We frequently on our first night out, that's what we end up doing. So in this case, Elizabeth Furnace is kind of a possible stopover, but there's a rest area that's not too far from there that we've stayed at a few times, and there are lots of places that we can pick up prepared food along the highway. So we might just stop at the rest area and sleep for a few hours and then move on, which would get us to our next destination earlier in the day. Or we might decide to stay at Elizabeth Furnace. But that's kind of my thinking when I'm laying out, especially our first night. So there's the map. I do more or less the same thing for each stop along the way, and I create the spreadsheet. Generally, as I find destinations that are a comfortable distance from our last destination, I'll look that up in my spreadsheet of that type of campgrounds, National Forest Service, for example, in this case, and I'll copy that row from that spreadsheet, paste it into my itinerary spreadsheet, leaving the 5 columns that I have added to the left of the longitude and latitude for the information that I'm adding that's trip specific. And I'll develop a spreadsheet of each stop along the way, and frequently I'll have my first choice destinations in the main list, and then down below I'll create a second list that are alternative stopovers, and they'll be keyed to the stopover that they would be a substitute for. I'll finish the description of my planning process in the second and final installment of this brief series. In it, I'll cover my use of the data in my itinerary spreadsheet in creating a custom Google map. I'll also talk about some of the other ways I use the planning products I've developed. Thank you for watching. If you found this video of interest, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. See you in the next episode.